Nithyanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrusham Tattvamashyaadilakshyam Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami.
We welcome all the Shri Mahants, Kotaris, Tanedaras, Samajis, Satsangis, Balasants, visitors and viewers to this Vaakyaartha Sadhas conducted by the Balasants of Nithyananda Gurukul. Today's topic for Vaakyaartha Sadhas is Swamiji Satsangs.
I have a question. What did Swamiji mean by putting ourselves in ignorance?
What I feel is being ignorant is our decision. Like how Swami told today that we only chose to be ignorant due to some incident or incompletion. But because it is we only who chose the ignorance, we only can even complete with our ignorance. So what I feel is what Swami meant by telling that we only create our ignorances. It is our strong ignorance and arrogance and strong decision out of which you create ignorance.
Just adding a point, what I feel is when Swamiji said that we put ourselves in ignorance is, like, for example, when we are small, we might have seen our friends pass their math exam without learning any tables or anything, but we had to learn all the tables again and again, like we didn't like the tables at that time. So we start getting into the cognition like, oh, see, that person is not even learned table properly, but he passed the math exam. But I also had to pass with learning it so much. Why should I learn a table? I do not want to learn the tables. So when you start getting into this cognition, it's our decision. We decide to like not learn the tables or not know something. So what I feel is it's our decision to like not know something and get into ignorance. So this is what I felt as what Swamiji meant by saying we put ourselves in ignorance.
I have a question. When we're born itself, we are born with ignorance. So how is it our decision to be ignorant?
What I think is when we are born with a sweet ignorance, which is basically like we are ready to learn. Even if something new comes up, we are ready to learn. But as we grow up, we basically get the dirty ignorance, which we just say no to anything new or any new knowledge. So what I think is when we're born with the sweet ignorance, at which we'll be ready to even learn new things. But as we grow up, we gain the dirty ignorance.
Adding to the point, as how Swamiji told in today's satsang, ignorance is actually when you decide not to learn. It's not that you're not knowing something, but it's your decision when you decided not to learn. So like she told, when we are born, it's not that we are that time deciding we will not learn. But due to various situations which happen in our life, due to such things, we take the decision that we should not learn. So that's how I feel that it's us who bring the ignorance upon us.
Adding a point, what I feel is like as you told, when we are born, we don't have that intelligence, we don't have that knowledge at all. So as we grow up, we continuously like collect ideas, different ideas, whatever is there around us. So when you start collecting like that, that's when we actually become like that. Arrogance will start in us and will deny new possibilities and all those incompletions which we collect from the society. From that we'll start cognizing things around us. So this is what I understand as ignorance, like where you yourself deny the possibility of any knowledge. Like for example, like any mother, when she just goes and gives the child a chocolate or something, the child will feel happy at that moment, yes, but the child will just stop itself with that happiness. He'll not even look forward for anything. He'll not tries new possibilities, or it will not even seek for more and more. So this is what I understand as ignorance. So when we are born, we might be not having the knowledge, but as we grow up, we become more arrogant and like the dirty ignorance comes in us.
I have a question. When we are born, we are completely complete, and when we are complete, no situation can violate us, and no incompletion can violate us. But when we are small, we are completely complete. But then how can situations and incidents make us incomplete and bring ignorance and arrogance in us?
What I feel is that like when you are born, yes, you actually, when you're born, you don't get violated by things and all. As after like few days, when the karmas are actually transferred to you, and that's the time when you start collecting all these incompletions, and you're continuously collecting the incompletions from your surroundings. So from that only you start even cognizing incompletions.
I have a question. Today Swamiji said that knowledge is vertical. What did he mean by that?
What I feel is what Swamiji meant by saying knowledge is vertical is, like when we start getting knowledge, we just start from one topic, we move to the next topic. So we keep gaining more and more knowledge, like just like connecting each other. So when we start gaining all this, like connecting, we like learn various topics and we discover various sciences. But in the end, all the topics are connected together. So this is what I felt what Swamiji meant by saying knowledge is vertical.
Adding a point, what I understand is like knowledge is vertical is like whenever you're like achieving the knowledge from the right context of just gaining for more and more knowledge, at that time automatically you'll discover new possibilities within you. Like how Swamiji gave an example, he'll be able to handle vast knowledge just because he doesn't have that ignorance in him. Whatever, like any topic of politics or like sacred arts thing, anything, whatever you talk to him, he'll just be able to talk about it, and he'll be having a lot of information about it. So what I understand by this is like, when that knowledge starts in you and that ignorance just melts away, then automatically different possibilities of yourself, different dimensions of yourself just opens up, and you'll just reinvent yourself in different ways. So this is how I understand as knowledge is vertical.
I have a question. Is knowledge only about learning?
What I feel is knowledge is not just restricted to some learning of you, but the whole process of knowledge itself starts only by learning. Only when you are ready to give your listening to everything around you, that is when you even start imparting knowledge towards you. And apart from that, what I feel as a knowledge is it's not just restricted to some mental ideas which you have, but it's also about how much of understanding you have about life, where it directly comes into use. Like most of us know so many things, but if it's not going to be useful, then again we are not using it from the right context. So what I feel is knowledge is not just stuck to some certain set of ideas which you read in some books or something, but it is which practically teaches you in your life from every situation. It's not just something which you gain from some textbooks or something like that.
What I feel is, like how Sundareswara Maharaj told that knowledge is not just learning, it is living those truths. Like many of us know that we are Shiva, we are consciousness, but none of us live those truths. None of us constantly cognize that we are consciousness. We know that itself is not knowledge, but it becoming our experience and cognition is what I feel as knowledge.
Adding a point, what I understand is knowledge itself is like a possibility given to you to reinvent yourself. So knowledge is not like what we understand is like learning from something. Like anytime, whatever knowledge is presented to you, when it helps you reinvent yourself, that's what I understand as knowledge.
Just adding a point, what I feel is knowledge is not just learning. And like how we are discussing, it starts with learning, but knowledge is also like, setting the right context of every action you do. Whether you start up from waking in the morning or you start brushing your teeth or when you do yoga, setting the right understanding and setting the right context for everything is also knowledge. So this is what I feel is knowledge.
What I feel is knowledge is not just learning, it is even expressing all your possibilities in life and expressing your creativity in life.
I have a question. How to drop arrogance?
What I feel, how to drop our knowledge is, arrogance is by constantly having the right context for our life and our actions, and constantly contemplating and reinventing yourself in each of your actions is what I feel as dropping our arrogance.
I have a question. Is it that arrogance leads to ignorance?
What I feel, yes, arrogance does lead to ignorance, because only when we start getting arrogant about whatever we know, and at one point, suddenly life tells us that no, you do not know this. when it tells it a little bit forcibly, that time we immediately get into incompletion. That no, I know all this. How can life tell I don't know all this? And when we get into that incompletion, what I feel is we start making the decision of no, I do not want to learn this. It's not for me. I'll do it sometime later. Or we make a decision, no, I don't want to do this. So what I feel, only when we start getting arrogant, we'll get into the space of incomplete. Only when we start getting arrogant, we start getting into the space of ignorance.
What I feel is that arrogance is only like the root of ignorance, because what I understand as arrogance is like you having a lower perception about yourself, you cognizing yourself to be something small. So only when you're cognizing yourself like that, and you're like this much knowledge is enough for me to survive. So when you start cognizing like that, so then there starts the ignorance. So what I feel is only when you have arrogance, that will only lead you to more and more ignorance.
I want to add a point. What I feel is basically arrogance is having denial towards life and just not being ready to expanding and having resistance towards expansion and just being as you are, just constantly shrinking yourself. And ignorance is you not being ready to expand yourself through knowledge. So what I feel is basically arrogance is ignorance, and arrogance also leads to ignorance, and ignorance leads to arrogance, and it becomes a vicious cycle.
I have a question. Arrogance and HDHD are same.
What I feel is SDHD leads you to arrogance.
Adding a point, as you told, arrogance only leads to SDHD, because what I understand as arrogance is like you having a lower cognition about yourself and continuing to have only that and not letting yourself to expand more. So only when you have a lower cognition about yourself and when you stop yourself from expanding more, then only you'll get all this as self-doubt, self-denial, self-hatred and all this. So this is how I feel like SDHD's root is arrogance.
Just adding a point, what I feel is that arrogance starts leading you to the SDHD. Because only when you start having arrogance about yourself and at one point you're disproven, or like suddenly you find out you do not know something, at that point only like you start doubting yourself. Like, no, I thought I knew this, but I don't know this. Why did it happen? And you start using this one incident for judging the further incidents also to happen. For example, you fail in an exam your teacher has given you, and the next exam which is coming, even though it's an easy one, you will start putting that self-doubt on yourself, that no, I failed in the last exam itself, that paper also they told it is very easy, how am I going to pass in this exam? And then slowly you start getting into self-denial that no, I don't think I can pass this exam. And this is what I feel happen. So what I feel, arrogance is the road towards SDHD.
Adding to the point, what I also feel is that because at some point of your life you have taken the decision not to learn, and from there only you started the self-doubt, oh, will I be able to do it? Because one time you decided that you cannot do it, after that only you start getting the, oh, will I be able to do such an action? Then only start the self-doubt, self-denial and all that. So what I feel is the ignorance and the arrogance is the base of all the incompletions, all SDHD which is there.
I have a question. Swamiji said that ignorance is root of everything. What did he mean by that?
What I feel is only when you start having ignorance that you do not want to know something, or that you don't want to learn this particular thing, or don't want to learn anything, and you start getting into the pattern, only then you start, like when you don't learn, you start getting into other patterns. For example, your teacher asks you to learn 12 tables as homework, and once you go home you start getting into ignorance that no, this table is so hard, I don't want to learn this table. And only after this, the next day at school, you will start getting into the fear pattern that oh no, I did not learn the 12 tables, what is my teacher going to say? Everybody else would have learned the tables, I would have been the only person. And after that, you will start getting into all the other patterns. So this is what I feel is what Swamiji said, that ignorance only is the root of all the other patterns.
Adding a point, as he told, like when we are born, we don't have that intelligence in us. So automatically we start collecting the ideas from the society. So because of that, we start developing different incompletions. So the idea, like and we stop ourselves in different ways. So this is ignorance. So only when this ignorance starts, and only when you start perceiving yourself to be something small, then automatically the context which you set to do things will also change. So because of that, more and more incompletions, different patterns and all, you'll start creating different patterns. So this is how I understand, like, ignorance is the root of like all incompletions and everything. So when this context, when you get the right context in you, and when you start aligning all your acts, then automatically the intelligence starts. So it's like context, that intelligence is just the exact opposite of ignorance. So when the intelligence starts, you start exploring yourself in new dimensions and reinventing yourself, and because of that, you'll just flower more, and your seeking will also just go more and more. So the ignorance in you just breaks off, just melts away and goes off. So I understand, like, ignorance is the root of all incompletion. Just by getting the context, just by setting the right context, you can melt away this ignorance.
Having a question, what did Swamiji mean by source pattern?
What I feel is like how root patterns constantly make us incomplete and put us in powerlessness. Like that, source patterns are the knowledge which constantly makes us complete and powerful. That's what I feel as source pattern.
Just adding a point, what I feel is what source pattern is the patterns which, when we start analyzing them, will give us a solution which will help the whole of humanity and all the living beings, which will give a big relief to like all the human beings and all the living beings, is a source pattern.
What I feel is source pattern is a response to a situation which makes us constantly reinvent ourselves, and which will make us reinvent consciousness constantly. That is what I feel as source pattern.
Adding a point, what I feel as source pattern itself is like the one of the techniques, like how to come out of the root pattern, the ignorance, how to break the ignorance and come out of it. This is what I understand as source pattern. So like whenever we are living in Gurukul, whenever we are living around Swamiji, automatically Swami once told that he created a bouquet for us. Like he picked up all the best things in the whole universe. He picked up all the best techniques for us to reach the ultimate, for us to get enlightened. So he picked up all those and created a beautiful path for us, and such a like easy path for us. So that's what is like the Sangha and living in Gurukul and all. So he provides us such a nice space, and he continuously trains us again and again and again. And he'll make sure that the ignorance in us just goes away. So just by living in Gurukul, just by living around Swamiji, automatically we'll discover the source pattern, and all the ignorance in us, the root patterns, all the different aggregates and everything just melts away and goes off.
What I feel, like the best way and one of the easiest ways to get rid of arrogance and ignorance and start gaining knowledge is just to attend the July Varanasi IA. There, Swamiji himself will guide us through the path and also help us achieving the goal. And once we achieve the goal, Swamiji also will tell us how to live it in our everyday life, and he'll make it practical for all of us.
Also, what I feel is, whenever we are in the space of ignorance, that time we completely become dumb and we don't know what we are doing things around us. So we just take decisions with so much of ignorance that continuously it leads us to more and more problems where there's no intelligence at all. But whenever you are in the space where you are listening to life, and when you are setting the right context for everything, wherever you have the context of why you are doing what you're doing, why the purpose of each and every action which you do, whether it is aligning to your inner image and other four images. So whenever you live your life from such a thing, then continuously intelligence expresses through you, and it leads you to the space of completion, to more and more into the space of completion. So also what I feel is, whenever you are in the space of completion, naturally your ignorance gets cleared. And for you to get rid of your ignorance, as we already spoke, Varanasi is the best chance for you where you can get rid of the ignorance which you have.
I want to share an experience. Before, like me coming to engineers or coming to Gurukul, I used to study in the outer world school, and that time I never wanted to learn much. I always wanted to know, like, I thought, okay, what I know is more than enough. Either way, nobody knows more than what I know until now. Whenever somebody overpasses me, that time I'll take care of learning more. For now, running my life, this much is enough. I was in that cognition, and I was shrinking more and more day by day. But after a few days, my parents suggested me to come to engineers program. And when I attended the program, I understood that just like being above others is not enough, and like in the end only I am going to shrink. So then I completed with this pattern of having ignorance and living in the small shell I had, and I started coming out of the shell I had and started experiencing knowledge and started learning more and more. Once I started doing that, I immediately saw that I started becoming better at everything I started to do. Even when I started making a mistake, I started learning from the mistake. And before, when I made a mistake, I used to only shrink. For example, if I had made a mistake in my physics exam, whenever that question used to come, in the fear that I might make a mistake, I used to just leave the question and go. But after attending the engineers program, I understood if I make a mistake, from next time I can correct it. And I started learning more and more, started gaining knowledge. So what I feel the best way for us, even if we are now living in the small nutshell we have, to come out and start experiencing the beautiful knowledge is just coming in. If you're adult, just attending the inner awakening, or if you're a kid, attending the inner awakening for kids program, and we'll start experiencing knowledge, which, as Swami says, is a true pleasure and the greatest pleasure in our life.
I have a question. How can setting the right context for everything you do help you drop your ignorance?
What I feel is context is intelligence. So whenever you are in intelligence, which is context, you'll be complete with your laziness, boredom and arrogance, which is a root for ignorance, and you'll start expressing intelligence, which will make you complete with your ignorance. So by setting the context, you can complete with our ignorance.
Just adding a point, what I feel is context is literally the opposite of ignorance, because when you set the right context for everything we do, we know why we are doing everything and we are ready to expand from what we are doing. But in the same place, in ignorance, we do not want to learn anything and we do not want to expand. So what I feel, when we start setting the right context for everything, we start undoing the action we started doing from ignorance. So when you start setting the right context, you'll know why we're doing every action, and we'll always be ready to expand. But whereas this cannot happen in ignorance, because ignorance is not wanting to learn anything. So this is how I feel that context can get rid of ignorance and make us complete with it.
I have a question. Once if we decide to fall inside ignorance, how just living around an enlightened master will make us to come out of our ignorance?
What I feel is, by living around the enlightened master, you will just start noticing the way he lives, and you will just get inspired and motivated to live like him. And not only that, and the presence of master just heals your inner space. Your inner space and your incompletions will just get healed by and completed by the presence of a living master.
Adding to what he told, see, in the place of incarnation or enlightened master, it is a place where your ignorance is constantly challenged. Your inability, your boredom, your tiredness is constantly challenged. So when you live there, you naturally will come out of the space of ignorance in you, and you'll start gaining more and more knowledge, and you'll be in a space of intelligence.
Adding a point, what I think is when you naturally live around the master, you'll be inspired to do whatever you need to do in your life. You'll have the right context for whatever you do. And what I think is when you have the right context, you'll just expand and expand and expand. When you expand, you'll naturally drop your ignorance.
Adding to the point, what I also feel is, whenever the learning happens, it's not from directly what the teacher is teaching or what it is, but the whole learning happens only by seeing how the teacher lives, how the person who is teaching you lives. So when we constantly, in Gurukul, when we constantly see Swamiji living all the greatest truths, being the embodiment of all the great truths, so naturally we also get inspired to live like him, and that the space in Gurukul is in such a way that even if we have any incompletion or any ignorance, continuously it is being challenged and we get back to the space of completion. So what I feel is, one of the most important things for you to break your ignorance and for you not to let the ignorance enter you is to continuously be in a space where people around you are also interested in breaking from their ignorance.
Adding a point, whenever you live around an enlightened being, automatically he'll give you that experience like you'll feel so great and you'll just feel so inspired to become like him. Whereas whenever you're living in the outer world and whenever you're in your ambience, there's nobody to like inspire you to get into more and more, to reinvent yourself more and more. Like for example, when you're with like some parents condition their kids, they put a lot of their incompletions and put a lot of their ignorance and all into the kids. So because of that, they become more and more dull only. They don't even feel inspired to seek for more and more. Whereas whenever you're living in the space of an enlightened master, whenever you're living in Gurukul, automatically you'll just be moving towards him, like to become like him, and realize that everything, what all the ideas you have is just like ignorance, and you'll just start reinventing yourself more and more.
What I feel is when you constantly live around a master, you will start mirroring his neurons. You'll start mirroring his neurons, and his biomemory will be transmitted to you, which will bring a deep healing and cleansing in your whole biomemory and mental setup, out of which you will just start radiating knowledge and the right context. So what I feel is by living near the master and living around the master is the best way for you to complete with your ignorance and become complete.
With this, we come to the conclusion of today's Vaakyaartha, and we'll be continuing to explore the deeper truths in the further Vaakyaartha. With this, we'll conclude the Purna Mantra. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sarvam Sadguru Padukaatmanamastu. Om Nithyanandam.